Hey everyone. Boy, a lot of these media outlets, especially these left-leaning media outlets, they seem bound and determined to constantly misrepresent anyone that they see or deem as their opponents in regards to politics or ideology. It's unbelievable. But yet these people, and this is in reference to a Vox article, VOX, very left-leaning, but and it's regards to Jordan Peterson, but it's this constant referencing and calling him a right-winger. But meanwhile, Vox would never put forth an article that wouldn't be outright and ultimately defending like the LGBTQ, whatever. Think about it. Gender pronouns. People are asking nowadays, and in the U.S., I think in New York, they got like 30-something different gender references now, or pronouns that they refer to themselves as. Or in Canada and the Ontario Human Rights Tribunal, they're defending all these people. Or like the universities, it's a big uproar just by sheer fact that you have to call these people by what they want you to reference them as, right? So even if something that's completely outrageous, like gender fluidity, where you can just, hey, I might be a guy. I might want to, identify as a male right now. And then maybe in 10 minutes might want to identify as a female or maybe as a unicorn or something. I don't know. But we're supposed to accept all that stuff, right? That's not even built on anything that's even logically, morally, or scientifically or biologically consistent in any way or any stretch of the imagination. But these very people, like I say, the ultimate defenders, right? They just constantly, it's they're holy warriors in defending that kind of bullshit, that kind of identity bullshit, right? But yet they constantly misrepresent people like Jordan Peterson and constantly paint him as a right-winger, which Jordan Peterson has said multiple times. It's out there, so it's not like they don't have any evidence or proof that he doesn't identify as a conservative. He identifies as what you would consider a classical liberal. So why do they constantly misrepresent the man in this manner? I mean, like I say, if you're all about this identity politics bullshit, well, can you at least refer to the man by his preferred pronoun or his preferred ideology, right? Like, why misrepresent the guy unless you're doing it for political reasons? Anyways, the headline of this Vox article is Jordan Peterson, the obscure Canadian psychologist turned right-wing celebrity, explained. Who Peterson is and the important truths he reveals about our current political movement. And this is by Zach Beaucamp, March 26, 2018. Jordan Peterson is a psychology professor at the University of Toronto, a widely cited scholar of personality, and the author of what's currently the #1 best-selling nonfiction book on Amazon in the United States. The New York Times' David Brooks, echoing George Mason University economist Tyler Cowen, calls him the most influential public intellectual in the Western world right now. Jordan Peterson is also a right-wing internet celebrity who has claimed that feminists have an unconscious wish for brutal male domination. So already twice. We've only made it, a few sentences, a paragraph into it, barely. And they've already, in the headline, and already referenced him twice as a right-winger, which Jordan Peterson himself does not identify as a right-winger. So what's the point of this, Vox, if not to use, because we all understand nowadays from the left-wingers is if you call him a right-winger, it must mean that's code for he's racist, he's a homophobe, he's an Islamophobe, he's the worst kind of person ever. Like the negative connotations that left-wing media outlets present in terms of calling someone a right-winger, we all know what that means. They won't come out and say it basically, but they're basically suggesting as much as, hey, he's kind of a little bit like a Nazi. But I'll even preface the whole thing right now by suggesting that Hitler, and there's the proof's out there, folks. Hitler was no right-winger, okay? Look at the guy, look at his stature, look at his history, growing up as a socialist. The fact that the Nazis that was a short form for the National Socialist German Workers' Party. It was all socialism, and these people were entrenched in the socialist ideology. Even Mussolini in Italy his dad was one of the staunchest proponents of socialism, and Mussolini followed in his footsteps, more or less. So, right wing, none of them are right-wingers, but this is how they try to paint these people, because then they can try to fly under the radar as the leftists, as pretend that they're, oh look, they're the benevolent saviors that are coming to protect the people from these right-wingers. Yeah, total political linguistics that is meant to completely deceive you, folks. Just know that. Referred to developing nations as pits of catastrophe in a speech to a Dutch far-right group, and just last Tuesday threatened the social critic Pankaj Mishra, who'd written a searingly critical essay on Peterson with physical violence over Twitter. If you were in my room at the moment, I'd slap you happily, is the direct quote. So now, once again, no context whatsoever, right? Absolutely no context. So you should know already that this is an ideologically driven political narrative. As if, what, Jordan Peterson, U of T professor, what, he's some violent fucking authoritarian now? Is that what Vox is suggesting? Right? Like, holy shit, folks. This is wild, man. This is what they're doing is you're just trying to throw bait to the leftist bait. That's all this is all about. When Kathy Newman, a journalist for the UK's Channel 4, challenged Peterson's arguments in a televised interview, she received so many death threats that she had to get help from the police. There were literally thousands of abusive tweets. It was a semi-organized campaign, she recalled in an interview. It ranged from the usual cunt, bitch, dumb blonde to I'm going to find out where you live and execute you. There's already laws against people threatening violence against you, right? So, but hey, why isn't Channel 4 reporting all these people that have threatened direct violence to a person, and you actually have clear and concise proof of it? Why aren't we hearing about all these things, right? You would think you would hear about it. I mean, it's the media. The leftist media dominates the fucking airwaves still, and cable television, and even some portions of the internet. So why aren't we hearing about all these fucking, criminal charges being laid against these criminals that have threatened poor little Kathy Newman, which, I mean, just go look at the interview, folks. And once again, these people, they're just words. I mean, if they, if someone comes to actually genuinely threaten Kathy Newman with actual physical violence, yeah, of course, nobody out there is going to defend, not Jordan Peterson, not me, nobody. You're not going to find anyone, whether you want to call them right-wingers, libertarians, classical liberals, independents, critical thinkers. No one is advocating for using fucking violence here. And I don't know how these media outlets can even pretend to put forth this kind of narrative without, think about what's going on in this person's head already. I mean, just like they are literally writing pure fiction, pure propaganda, and hoping that a large portion of the population or those who consume this kind of shit will just fall for it hook, line, and sinker. This is not a case of mistaken identity of two Jordan Petersons yoked to the same name. These seemingly distinct men, the accomplished scholar and the controversy-courting culture warrior, are one and the same, and their work is integrally interlinked. And that hybrid of scholarly air and provocative trolling has netted Peterson a huge following. He has 560,000 followers on Twitter and nearly 1 million YouTube subscribers. Really? So I guess what's he suggesting? Just everybody's turned into right-wingers and Nazis all of a sudden because of Jordan Peterson. And how did he even come to prominence? How do we even know his name? Because the leftists and the ideologues on the left and those in academia tried to use the full force of government, right? Violence, the monopoly of forces. That's what government represents for those of you that don't understand already. Government represents the monopoly of force of violence against this guy for daring to challenge their preconceived notions that gender is just a social construct, right? I mean, the guy was literally saying, listen, and he's even said, hey, if a LGBTQ or trans in his classroom said, I would prefer you refer to me as whatever particular pronoun, he'd be like, yeah, I'd probably do it. It would depend on the relationship. Like, he's just being completely honest and concise in his language. But he's like, no, I have nothing against referring to anyone with a particular pronoun. But when you enshrine it in law and try to force me to do it, right? Force? I'm kind of against that. I'm kind of against using preemptive force against people to spew words that I don't believe in. Like he's saying, I don't believe any of this bullshit. I might do it out of courtesy, but I don't believe in their leftist ideology. So yeah, don't try to force me to do it. But look at how they're trying to paint that. Look at how they're trying to twist their narrative. Peterson introduces people to many, many other things they just don't really get elsewhere. Cowan says, he is still influential, massively so, reaches a large general public audience of millions, most of all young males. How many other intellectuals do? Yeah, the religious ideologues and zealots in academia? Of course not. Listen, that collectivism, that only appeals to the lowest common denominator, the sheeple. And apparently men are like, they want to raise and elevate themselves above that fray. And that seems to be the dominant aspect of where he was most predominantly popular. But as we're seeing, look at all his lectures now and all these venues he's been going out. Now you're seeing more and more women once they've battled through it, because, well, the men were the one that have been fucking hated on and presented as, oh, we're evil. So of course the men were already like, oh, I want to hear something different, right? Oh, I want to hear someone that's defending me in some way, in some aspect, in some regard. But now even women are like, oh, now that I've heard it, actually sounds pretty reasonable and representative of my own views. So now he's seeing out there in the audience, Jordan Peterson is like, actually now we're almost 50-50. So it's not just a predominantly male thing. YouTube is predominantly male, so really that's what they're referencing. But once again, when you're trying to put forth political propaganda and that kind of narrative, well, you skirt that kind of reality or that objective reason, right? They don't want to say that. They don't want to give you any truth as far as that's concerned. So how did an obscure Canadian psychologist become an international phenomenon? The answer is that Jordan Peterson is tailor-made to our political moment. His reactionary politics and talents as a public speaker combine to be a perfect fit for YouTube and the right-wing media. Sore losers, man. That's all I'm hearing from most of these leftists, these ideologically driven, these ideologically possessed people, as Jordan Peterson said, although I call them statists. They're into the cult, the religion of statism. And they are, when you're that possessed, oh, yeah, like I say, go talk to one of those true right-wing religious zealots, and they're just as ideologically possessed as these fucking people. It's just that they're on what they would be their true opponents. Like, if you want to go against people, like I would suggest to this gentleman or whoever it is that put this article, go against your real ideological opponents. Jordan Peterson is not that kind. All right, but go against. But that's the thing. When you get the ideologues, they won't even talk to each other because they're so ideologically possessed. Like the right wingers or the left wingers, they're so ideologically possessed they won't even fucking come near each other. So the fact that they're even willing to talk about Jordan Peterson is almost an admission, an acknowledgement that he's neither. Right? It's not anything representative of an ideologue. Where videos of conservatives destroying weak-minded liberals routinely go viral. Peterson's, yeah, the truth will win out in the end. It always has. Listen, like I say, if you tell people 2 + 2 is 4, even though you can create some political propagandist narrative and get a whole lot of people to try to tell them it's 5, ultimately, if people are reasonable, they'll still acknowledge, no, I'm sorry, it's 4. Even though you fuckers put a lot of work and effort, propagated the message in big neon lights all over the place that 2 + 2 is 5, I have to use common sense, reason, and logic, and damn it, it's 4. Peterson's denunciations of identity politics and political correctness are standard issue conservative, but his academic credentials make his pronouncements feel much more authoritative than your replacement level Fox News commentator. I reached out to Peterson. A spokesperson turned down my interview request. What does that tell you, right? I mean, Jordan Peterson's been giving everybody, you just literally said he was on Kathy Newman's program, right? And he's been on all kinds of media outlets that have challenged what he has to say tremendously and completely misrepresented who he is as a man and what he stands for, but he still gave them the opportunity. So the fact that his spokesperson said, nah, 2 things I'd take away from it. 1, you're just not important enough. Nobody cares what you say or what you think. You might want to work on that. And 2, they know exactly what you're trying to do. Just Just look at the article. All you want to do, just like Vice and all these other fucking dipshits, is play this fucking political propagandist game and try to hopefully catch him in a gotcha moment. And he's basically, and his spokespeople and wise of them is like, yeah, I'm going to pick my battles and I'm not going to punch down. Peterson and his people and the kind of people that he associates with, they don't want to punch down. He's not a bully, unlike you fucks. He don't want to punch down. If you ever raise and elevate yourself in any manner, in any form, you might get that chance. Peterson is also particularly appealing to disaffected young men. He's become a lifestyle guru for men and boys who feel displaced by a world where white male privilege is under attack. First of all, there is no fucking white male privilege in that collective manner where you can just paint, if you're white male, you're privileged. You collectivist, authoritarian, piece of shit. You racist. You fucking bigot. His new best-selling book, 12 Rules for Life, is explicitly pitched as a self-help manual, and he speaks emotionally of the impact his work has had on anxious, lost young men. Jordan Peterson, then, isn't just some random professor who managed to strike it rich. Strike it rich. He didn't. There's just a whole lot of people out there that are supporting him with small donations on Patreon. It's not like he struck it rich like by selling the soul to the devil or becoming part of the corporate world, right? Like these crony corporate types, or, you know, running for politics or any of that shit. You know, we're the truly inept, the authoritarian and corrupt among us congregate to enrich themselves economically and socially. It's just people recognize that his job in his university is definitely under threat, and basically no matter what happens, it's given him a safety net is what it's done. It's no matter what they do, Jordan Peterson isn't going anywhere as a result of a lot of people that care about defending what he's speaking out and standing for and allowing him to propagate his message, because you need money, folks. You know, the whole world works on, you know, economics matters. So, but once again, this is, look, envy and resentment. And for what? Like as if the man doesn't deserve it? Wow. He's emblematic of the way white male anxiety is producing new and powerful political movements across the West today. Peterson is both a clinical and research psychologist, meaning he sees patients while also doing research. After he received his PhD in psychology from McGill University, one of Canada's two most prestigious universities, in 1991, he spent 2 years practicing at McGill's Hospital. After that, he was hired by Harvard, where he taught until 1998. He left when the University of Toronto, Canada's other leading university, hired him as a full professor and a practicing clinician. Peterson's research specialty is personality traits. One of his most prominent papers is a study of what makes people more or less creative, where he argues that people who pay more attention to seemingly irrelevant details actually tend to be more creative. According to Google Scholar, he has been cited more than 10,000 times in academic publications and is one of the 70 most cited researchers in his subfield. I spoke to 8 academic psychologists before writing this piece. The feedback I received on his published work was uniformly positive. His work in personality assessment is very solid and well respected, says David Watson, a psychology professor at Notre Dame. But this work, respected as it may be, has little to do with Peterson's fame. His most influential research was published in the late 90s and early to mid 2000s of his 20 most cited papers. Only one came out after 2010. By contrast, his international celebrity, as measured by worldwide Google searches for Jordan Peterson, didn't start to rise until October 2016. Not sure what any of that has to do with anything, but I guess it just fills up the article, makes it look like something, right? I guess I fucking know. Makes it look like the person did his research, at least, I guess, right? And that's that premise. Got to put forth that premise, like, well, this person must know something. What happened in the fall of 2016 is that Peterson inserted himself into a national Canadian debate over transgender rights, specifically by refusing to refer to a student by their chosen gender pronouns. So once again, he has said multiple times, and it's all out there, folks. It's like, do these idiots really not think that, well, I get it. You're catering to the people that don't even want to take the fucking few seconds it would take to learn the truth regarding this statement. So, like I said, this person is just trying to propagandize and further confuse and manipulate the minds of people that just are unwilling to think critically. At the time, the Canadian Parliament was considering something called Bill C-16, a bill banning discrimination against people in the basis of gender identity or gender expression. In September, Peterson released a series of YouTube videos attacking the bill as a grave threat to free speech rights. He said he would refuse to refer to transgender students by their preferred pronouns. Separating gender and biological sex was, in his view, radically politically correct thinking. He argued that C-16 would lead to people like him being arrested. More complete misrepresentations. He said he would refer. It's all about the government using force. Once again, folks, it was all about his willingness to defend against preemptive force on behalf of the government in a legislator's bill called C-16, which makes it law. And you know, law is a direct, every law comes with it the threat of violence if you don't comply. And he showed that even on his Steve Paikin interview. People say, oh, well, it's only a fine if you don't. Okay, well, don't fucking pay the fine. Then what happens? Well, then you get all this shit, and it continues to further escalate to the point where they'll eventually, say, okay, you got to go to court to remedy it or make payments, or they'll start taking what out of your wages, or they'll start doing it. It's a constant escalation up to the point where if you keep refusing, ultimately, it's a direct threat of force, like a gun, a real fucking gun, or imprisonment, being locked in a cage. So he's completely and 100% correct when he says that, these legislative acts are preemptive force being used against people to force them into a particular ideology, into using language in a manner that is not befitting or even aligned with their own personal thoughts and opinions. If they find me, I won't pay it. If they put me in jail, I'll go on a hunger strike. I'm not doing this, Peterson said in an October 2016 TV interview. I'm not using the words that other people require me to use, especially if they're made up by radical left-wing ideologues. Experts on Canadian law said that Peterson was misreading the bill, that the legal standards for hate speech would require something far worse, like saying transgender people should be killed to qualify for legal punishment. But hey, Lindsay Shepherd, folks, another very popular Canadian. Remember the Inquisition by these ideologues? They threatened that woman, and if she hadn't recorded it, think about what would have happened, how would have that unfolded if Lindsay didn't record that entire interrogation, that bullying tactic. They might have very well taken this legally because they had the full force and power of the law on their side, right? So Jordan Peterson was completely correct in his assessment, and it didn't take long, just a matter of months, for an actual clear and concise case to come to light and show us that, see, he was right all along. And that's just early on. Think about what can happen once it becomes more normalized. This is an early example of what would become a hallmark of Peterson's approach as a public intellectual, taking inflammatory, somewhat misinformed stances on issues of public concern outside his area of expertise. Once again, bullshit. Proof's already out there, so I don't know why these people are trying to, well, look at who they're trying to cater to. And you left-wingers out there, please do not fall for the rhetoric of these fucking idiots. Start paying attention a little more, and you'll understand that the people that pretend that they're benevolent or your great saviors, your overlords, they are the exact opposite of that. But it worked for him. Peterson's videos on C-16 and political correctness racked up more than 400,000 views on YouTube within about a month of posting. There were rallies both for and against Peterson in Toronto. He made the rounds on Canadian television. Perhaps the defining moment of the controversy was a filmed confrontation in October 2016 between Peterson and a group of student activists at the University of Toronto. In it, Peterson calmly fields questions from trans students who are angry about his refusal to recognize their gender identity. In the video, he turns the argument around on them, suggesting that transgender activism and the broader rise of political correctness was bound to produce an ugly and dangerous backlash. I've studied Nazism for 4 decades, and I understand it very well. And I can tell you there are some awful people lurking in the corners, Peterson says. They're ready to come out. And if the radical left keeps pushing the way it's pushing, they're going to come. So he's even warning against right-wingers. So he's not obviously not a right-winger himself if he's warning against these people, right? If that's his peeps, why would he be ratting or selling them up the river or selling them out? Once again, even within this article, they're basically contradicting their own premises. Fans of Peterson's worldview saw the video as proof of his genius and bravery. Peterson was the avatar of reason and facts, pushing back against irrational social justice warriors, SJWs. One cut of the confrontation, titled Dr. Jordan Peterson Gives Up Trying to Reason with SJWs, currently has more than 3.5 million views on YouTube. Anyways, this is a really long article. I will post a link to it in the description of the video below, but I'm already over a half hour in this video, and I think the most important aspect of it has probably been contained or covered in this top portion of the article. But go ahead and go through the rest of it. You might find something in there that you might want to comment on, or post something in the comment section of my video. Let me know if I missed out on something, and I'll come back and cover it maybe in a future video. But what the most important thing I want to point out in this video is that these people, not only are they misrepresent, and this is what's going to, think about it of an argument, whether it's with your girlfriend, your children, your spouse, your parents. If each other misrepresents the opponent in the argument, well, you're never going to be able to have a proper dialogue, and you're never going to get to the point where you can come together and be reasonable people towards each other. So this constant misrepresentation and this attacking of people like Jordan Peterson, you're only driving a bigger wedge and creating a further divide among the population. You're not helping no matters by putting out these articles. Yeah, you're feeding your base. You're putting out that bait for the leftists, for the ideologues. But if that's the only thing you're looking to do, well, I guess good for you. You are successful in that endeavor. But you have to live in this Western world like the rest of us, and this continuation, this continued race to the lowest common denominator, this continued race, this escalation of identity politics, you're going to see, every one of you, you're eventually going to see that it's going to fucking backfire hardcore, just like Jordan Peterson, just like anyone, just like many people throughout history, historians and people that write on the historical precedent of this kind of identity to politics bullshit. The warnings have been out there for fucking ever, folks. For literally at least a century, well, multiple centuries, but for just most recent knowledge, I guess, at least the most recent century, there's ample amounts of examples where identity politics is, that's the worst form of collectivism that you could possibly propagate, especially when you're talking about in terms of government and media. Confusing and trying to dictate and micromanage and control the masses politically. Well, yeah, you're going to get what you're basically reaching out for and striving for. You're going to get that division if that's what you want. And as far as I'm concerned, you're probably not going to like how it's going to unfold. You might be enjoying that immediate rush, but the pain, or the sobering up, or the sober effects of all that rush, that's going to come later. Watch and learn. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.